You are listening to Build, Excite, Equip, easy change management for project teams. I am your host, Nicola Graham, coming to you as a business change manager, entrepreneur and author, as well as discussing top tips and tricks for project teams to use to improve your project adoptions. Let's get started. And why did I pivot? So the truth is, I stayed in that role until I had my first child, or certainly got pregnant with my first child. And when I decided to come back to work after having my first child, I didn't want to come back full time. So my role that was obviously seconded to somebody whilst I was on maternity leave, I didn't really have that particular set of accounts anymore. And my boss at the time said, well, let's put you in a part-time role. So actually, we were doing a merger and acquisition with a smaller company at the time that they needed somebody to manage the project for. Now, little did I know that would obviously send me on my merry way to become a project manager. But I would work 2 days a week, and it was my duty to do everything around merging that company. So it was from organising the office move, understanding what technology they use today, you get where this is going, and what they needed to work with tomorrow, how we could migrate the data from one system to the other so that we obviously obtained and retained all of the clients and the CRM data that they had. It was working with the small team. There was about 10 of them that we merged into our company. I think memory, it might be a bit varied on that one now. So it was understanding the team, understanding their roles, how we could combine that role into the existing processes that we had. But it was also then training them and supporting them after. So during that time, that was a really great introduction to project management and also business change management. Little did I know, I wasn't qualified to do the role. It just landed on my lap. And as it turned out, I did a really good job. So what I loved about that is I loved every day was different. I loved the fact that I was in like knee deep in all of the information about that company, the what's, why's, how's. It was understanding what acquisitions and mergers truly meant. Why were we acquiring this company, and what did we want from that company? So that was really interesting. I really enjoyed the coordination of it. It turned out that obviously I was bringing one of my skill sets to the front of what I did, and that was being organised. And I've always considered myself to be a natural leader. So as a natural leader, I felt that being a project manager enabled me to really help lead and coordinate a group of people and experts that needed to do something or create something together. I found it challenging in many ways. The time, I was only 2 days a week, but I did overcommit, and I found myself wanting to still be part of that team, even when I was at home being a mum. So I found that the biggest challenge for me. It was finding that balance between what was a full-time job to a part-time job, and obviously then still being a full-time mother. So that's what I found challenging. And it got to a stage where I did want to go back to a full-time role. I needed to go back to that full-time role. So the reason I pivoted from that particular role is I then decided that I needed that full-time situation. And at the same time, ironically, I did relocate down to London, and obviously the role was in the Midlands. So I had to pivot. It was then that I chose to do my project management qualifications. So I went and did my ProSci. I later then did my Agile project management and also the BA side of Agile. And that's when I pivoted to being a project manager. So as a project manager, I actually started my project management career working for an Australian firm, funny enough. And that Australian firm, what they did, and we're going back quite a few years ago, so this was very niche for its time, is they would come into an organisation. They were very focused on the legal industry at the time, because what they'd seen is there was this gap for better applications that suited specific industries. So, for example, there was a law firm that we worked with, and we'd recognized that they needed a system that would be like a directory for all of their legal teams. For example, if I was part of the law firm in London and I needed somebody with a speciality in, mining, and I needed to find somebody within the organization that could help me, I had no way of finding them. And this was, again, before the acceleration in things like your Microsoft suites, where you have a little bit more about the people. You didn't have that information. You didn't have that directory. So the whole company's concept and the way that we worked was on prototyping. Again, back in the day, it wasn't a thing, guys. This was new for its time. And those prototypes would be focused on understanding what the client needed, creating a smoke and mirrors version of the tool that we could provide them, i.e. we would give them a working prototype, which was pretty colours, buttons that pretended to work so that when they clicked on it, they could realise if it suited them. And then after that, they could then decide truly what they needed that tool to do for them. It was a great concept. And it's something that I've also pulled through my entire career since. So I was the project manager for that particular company, and because they were an Australian firm, I was also representing them in the UK. So there was a little hint of sales in there too, but there was a lot of work around the analytical side of that. So it really gave me a nice set of skills to go into organisations and start to do this customer journey mapping with them, understanding what they needed and how we could really produce that for them, as well as playing that back to them, understanding their needs, changing those needs, and obviously reporting back to an entire project development team to make sure that we could produce these really good tools for them. And that's how I got into project management. And I pretty much stayed in project management for quite a while. I bounced around lots of different industries, doing different kinds of project management. For example, I worked for one of the hospitals in London here. I'm not entirely sure how many names I can put into this, but it was a heart and lung specialist hospital in central London, and it was fascinating. I mean, I found myself in surgeries. I literally watched an open heart surgery. That was incredible. And I also wanted to put the scrubs on and look like a doctor for a change. But that was really good for me because I was working on a patient administration system there. And essentially that was upgrading what they had as a very old legacy system, and we could start to push all of the data into not specifically cloud-based, because it was still on-premise, because obviously the patient details was very sensitive, but it was easier to access, and it also worked with things like the doctors would have iPads and they could access the patient's information on that as well and go around to their beds and things like that. Really, really interesting. And for the same hospital, I then shifted over to an infrastructure project manager. Again, a complete different spin, because that was giving me the freedom and flexibility to understand how the infrastructural side of project management works. These are usually upgrades. They don't really impact people too much, but they do have a significant change on the people. And something that's really important in any kind of infrastructural project management is understanding disruptive periods for people. Let me rephrase that again. Understanding disruptive periods for the people, i.e. we cannot just cut or switch them over from one server to the other if it's going to create massive disruption for them. So it was really interesting. I also pulled back some of my old experience of a procurement manager in that role, because obviously we'd have to make sure that we are going out to tender for specific hardware that we needed. So again, fitted very much into my remit and my experiences. What I loved about being a project manager, after that I also I did a few other roles, but I'm not going to go into all of the project management roles I did. Let's just say that there was a lot, and there was a lot of different experiences at the time. So what I loved about being a project manager, like I said before, was very much focusing on coordinating myself, leading a team, making sure that everybody was supported in the way that they needed to be supported. But I particularly loved working with the key stakeholders. I loved working with the project board. I enjoyed the dealing with the management, the senior suites. And actually, during my time, I was very forward-thinking when it came to presenting and selling what was going on from a project aspect. As it transpires, that obviously led into what I became next. What I found challenging about being a project manager, at the time, I've definitely changed since, but at the time I found the governance around being a project manager quite challenging. I'm a bit of a rule breaker in general, so I think sometimes when I was asked to get some deliverables done, I wouldn't necessarily always do them on time. And I'd always have the project management office chasing me a lot. I know, considering these days that obviously I work with project management governance to ensure that obviously that project managers will apply the change activities. I used to be one of those that didn't. So when I do say that we need to govern the change activities within a framework, this is why, because I know that I would be the first one to break it if I was a project manager again. How bad is that? Why I pivoted.